Instagram is letting you guys know that we are live right now. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Okay, today I have two amazing guests. They are semi amazing. I leave that up to you guys to see. What do you think? Do you find them amazing or not? By the way, guys, I'm also going live from YouTube. For those of you who want to see my guests, you should come on my YouTube. The YouTube, can you please write my YouTube down on Instagram so I can pin it? Thank you very much. It's Sudhi Burnett English. Please join me on YouTube. My two guests today is Stephen and Jeff. They both close friends. But anyhow, do you guys want to join me on YouTube or you want to stay here? You just be able to hear them, but you would not see who they are. If you guys are curious to see who my guests are, please come on YouTube, Sudhi Barnett English. Okay, I'm gonna pin it here. Welcome everybody. Welcome Stephen from Chicago. A very short, brief introduction, and then Jeff, please.
Hi, Sudhi. Thank you for having me today. Yes, my name is Stephen. I am a consciousness researcher and consultant and astrologer. Here to see how I can participate in the group and provide as much insight as I possibly can. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, and thank you so much for accepting. Jeff, we're moving on to you.
Hi, everybody. I am Jeff Musial, and I am here in Los Angeles, and I am a life and business coach, and my primary focus is on the structures of society and how we can all thrive as best as possible. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, the topic of the day is somehow I got to download about this topic and I find it extremely amazing. Have you lost your soul or did you happen to sell your soul? And if you realize and you find out, which you're going to find out today on this live, that where is your soul? Have you sold it and you're not aware of it? You're going to find out and how to retrieve your soul. So starting up with Stephen. Stephen, would you like to tell us how do you find the topic? What's your input on our soul and where is our souls and where do we have to find it?
Yes, thank you, Sudhi. Of course, yeah. So we're all conscious beings. We're all individual units of consciousness, all divided. This involves all of nature and the animal kingdom and whatever is sentient and responds to whether it's speech, sound, touch. We're all here as a part of us that come down to take birth in this world and participate here in the world. And of course, we have a decent amount of free will, and what we do with that free will determine our overall evolution of our existence. And so, being here in the world, in this material world, allows us to enjoy and evolve, interact, and do all kinds of things that brings us pleasure and happiness and joy. And of course, it's also possible. The negative part of being here is that we could devolve our soul and actually come and leave here worse than when we arrived. So it's very careful. It's very important to be careful about who you what you do, what you say, your choices, decisions, and things like that, because there are karmic repercussions for this. And I can go into detail, but we okay on time?
Yeah, nice. Hold on one second. What I wanted to say, what Stephen said, that we have free will or somewhat. I just remember I got a flashback of what Ramana Maharaji said when they asked him, when the disciples asked Maharaji, Ramana, do we have free will? He never said, no, we don't, because he was so clever. He was aware that the minute you say, we don't have free will, people resistance will come up. So he didn't say yes or no. He said to that inquiry, I would say, who is it who's asking the question, whether we have free will or not? But anyhow, I'm going to go to Jeff and get back to you, Stephen. Jeff, what do you think about it?
Two things real quick to comment on that. I tend to agree with, I think, where your position is, because I agree with the philosophies of, what exactly is maybe the subtle difference between free will and determination, free determination. Because if we truly had free will, we could actually choose the thoughts that randomly pop into our head. But the fact that the thoughts randomly pop into our head maybe is against our will, but we're free to determine what we do with them. I think the two of you are much more masters in the spiritual and karmic realm. I tend to look at things in a more practical, pragmatic place. And so when I think about selling your soul, it might not be quite as literal as the two of you can speak on. For me, it might be a little bit more conceptual, as far as, what are the choices? How are you determining your life to go? Are you considerate of your fellow human? Are you compassionate of your fellow human? Or do you live in a very mercenary, take no prisoners way, where you're going to accomplish your goals at all others' expense?
Okay, so what do you say? Do you feel like, I want to stay on the topic specifically? What do you think about, are we, how do we know, even, let's start with this question. How do we even know if we sold our soul to a devil or someone, some other entities? How would you know that? Stephen?
Thank you. Yeah, so we have two main modes of consciousness. There is spiritual consciousness and material consciousness. And there's, nowadays, I think this is a good time to actually mention this example. These days, there is a distinct difference between, obviously, the political parties of the Republicans and the Democrats. And what I've noticed is that this is really the dominance of the hemispheres of the brain. So we have the left hemisphere, which masters logic and reasoning, and we have the right hemisphere, which masters creativity. And so there are going to, obviously, both hemispheres are in use. However, one is more dominant in the person than the other. And so this is going to be obvious when you come across certain people. You might end up arguing or debating. But there is a higher purpose going on here in the world, and that's actually to fully activate both hemispheres. And we're actually speeding toward that now, and this is reflected in the world. However, back to what I originally said. So we have having to sell our souls is going to cause the person to become more settled in the material consciousness and spiritual, because this is not our real world. This world is a dream and it's an illusion. And this is not my opinion. This comes from people who have had near-death experiences, and they actually return claiming that the world that they just visited was more real than the one they left here. And so it's easy to fall into believing that this world is all there is, and that we can see, touch, and and feel. But there are over 1,000 videos. This is important. I think everyone needs to know that if anyone ever second guesses this, there's over 1,000 videos you can find on YouTube of people who have experienced near death. And just listen to as many as you're willing to listen to. And everyone's story and experience is going to be different, because your experience will be determined based on the level of consciousness before you leave your body. This is very important to understand and know. And there's a war over on our consciousness now to actually crush it and keep it material, so that when you do reach end of life, that you're definitely destined for reincarnation, or you could get stuck in this dimension here, just out of phase. So I don't know. I want to go too far away from our topic here, but
You're basically saying that one of the ways that we can know if we sold our soul is that we come back here again, reincarnate on the third dimension.
well, it's very hard to leave here. I think that even if someone can, during this time I still feel we're in Kali Yuga. We're finishing it. And I think that during this time, for anyone who doesn't believe in life after death, if they can actually come to the point where they believe it, however that happens, whether it's an experience of their own or they just pursue it by study, this will be a major, major achievement. However, once you begin to master the consciousness, you're able to actually do many different types of things, such as you can even, some of these near-death experience stories talk about souls that have actually would sit up in a tree and follow their future parents, making they're actually deciding on whether they want to take birth into those, into the woman's, the mother's womb, and many stories like this. So the evidence is overwhelming if you're willing to look for it. However, yeah, again, I don't want to deviate too far away from our today's topic. So yeah, if you find yourself motivated by anything but love, then you're actually at risk of selling out your soul and devolving yourself further and further, because there's a barrier that we need to actually reach and overcome before the end of life, specifically when it comes to understanding our true existence.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Jeff, what do you think? As Stephen was talking about this topic, I just got a flashback of the conversation we had a couple of days ago about, when you were saying, like, what happens when you feel like there's an outside force that is more active. So I was kind of thinking, would that be a part when I sold my soul to another entity? You want to collaborate on it?
Sure, sure. And and I do explore a lot of these, kind of spiritual and metaphysical ideas. I just don't posture as any expert on them. And what I would say is, when it comes to the concept of selling your soul, I agree with Stephen completely that it's a material experience.
Mhm.
It's and I certainly haven't had any irresistible offers show up in my life where, if I were to choose some sort of path all of a sudden, everything's going right in my life. And what is going right? It's, well, I'm getting all of the material things that I want, all the money, all the big houses and cars and women, and all the stuff that a typical human might want in the material realm. So I agree with that completely. And it's interesting when I have conversations with you about this kind of invisible force. I'm not sure, and this is what we were talking about, I'm not sure if it's necessarily evil or not. I know that in my life, there are moments where I have taken massive, massive action, and especially in the last almost decade of my life, but especially in the last like 6 or 7 years, where when I've taken massive action, I face massive breakdowns and massive collapse, which is very different than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I took massive action. I got massive results, like very much like a coach, like a performance coach out there might say, and I did that and I lived that life. And in the last 6, 7 years, I've taken massive action and felt what occurs as this invisible force slamming me back. And I haven't been able to figure out what that is, if it is like a metaphysical muscle, like, if I do too many push-ups or pull-ups or bicep curls or any exercise, my muscles are going to be sore for days. So is this a spiritual metaphysical experience of muscle soreness, like spiritual muscle soreness that's slapping me back and I have to condition my spirit to grow? Or is it some sort of evil force that's trying to oppose my growth? I don't know. I can't speak as an authority on any of that, but we certainly have talked about the experience of it for sure.
Mhm.
But do you want to walk us through? It was very interesting. I find it fascinating. Do you want to walk us through the day when you were saying I was doing walking on the grass and I was doing
Oh,
all?
yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of tools, as I imagine both of you do. And, I have a lot of tools at my disposal, whether that tool is, earthing, which is just being out, getting sun in your eyes, putting your bare feet on the grass, on the earth, and getting the energy of the earth, doing physical exercise, doing push-ups, pull-ups, all that kind of stuff, doing meditation, doing different types of meditation where I can literally generate happiness for others. That's the meta meditation where I generate happiness and love for others. And I therefore feel that love and happiness inside myself. NLP. I've done all sorts of exercises where I get myself into a peak state, whether that's happiness or performance or empowerment, and then I anchor that in my body, and then I can trigger that. Breathing exercises, gratitude exercises, writing, journaling, speaking, and canting, all of it. Like, I know how to do all of it. And there have been moments where I've kind of, it's like, again, it's like physical exercise. We get a little lazy and it's like, wait, let's get back to the gym. Let's get back running. Well, I'll do that spiritually, where maybe I get a little bit lazy and it's like, let's get back to the spiritual gym and let me start to put into practice all of the tools that I know. And I take massive like spiritual action. And then within about a week, there's massive breakdowns in my life. It's like all of my career endeavors collapse, all of my health endeavors collapse, all of my romantic endeavors collapse and break down, family, friends collapse, break down, technology breakdown. And I'm like, what is that? What the hell is that? And so I'm left with this huge question mark and honestly a bit of anxiety because I don't know what that invisible force is. Again, is it that I went from not working out to going to the gym for too long and doing sprints, and now I've got this lactic acid? And the phrase I used with you was spiritual lactic acid. So do I just have this spiritual lactic acid that I have to just work through like a physical exercise, or is there someone watching me, right? That would be more the religious perspective, or context, is that there's some sort of evil being watching me that wants to keep me down. And I don't know how much energy I want to give to that, but I'm also not saying it's not possible. So that's where the two of you can come in and analyze that stuff.
Or it could be, Jeff, that you're using all your tools from your toolbox, and the universe is saying, now that you come up so equipped, let me notch up your
Yeah, that's right. It's just like, oh, you want to feel what real power feels like? Check this out. And then you understand how much power you don't have. You're like, okay, I got respect. I got respect.
What do you think? What do you think now that Jeff is using all of his tools? All of a sudden, everything is getting down and broken and getting worse than before he used all these tools.
This sort of reminds me of, when my life fell apart back in 2000 and 8, 9, 10, right around there. I had everything really went wrong for me, and that's really what started this journey for me. So to answer you, Jeff, and anyone else that actually feels the same way, see, this world is actually, because it's an illusion, right? As I mentioned earlier, there are energies at play, and specifically for each person individually, and these begin at birth. And so here is where astrology comes in, because I know most people, and this is important, most people may, they say, oh, I read the astrology horoscope in the newspaper, the magazine of their choice, and I know about it from that. But I'm talking about something a little bit more important here. This is actually measuring the path of your soul. So when you actually land in this world in a fetus, you'll be beginning, depending on where the moon is in the zodiac, you'll be starting a specific planetary period. And each planetary period runs for different amount of years. They're long, some of them much longer than others. And it's important to understand which planetary period you're running, and so that will actually explain what part of your life has focus, and then you would actually focus on that part of your life. And I know that as anyone in material consciousness would imagine, they're simply just trying to be happy. They're trying to get the family, the right career, the job, and get the kids ready for school, wherever you're at in your life. But there's actually an order, and there's a schedule there, and the schedule is at play. And on top of that, where you live in the world actually also affects. So just because you're born into a particular city doesn't mean that location may not be the best for you. You may actually benefit from relocating tremendously. There are yogas in astrology that actually indicate that if the if the sun and the moon is in a particular house of the zodiac chart, the person won't achieve career success until they relocate at least 400 miles away from their birth city. These are secret yogas that the astrologers learn and collect with experience. And that's why it's important to have at least one Vedic astrology reading from a competent astrologer that can actually give you the foundation and actually teach you. You can monitor and follow it yourself. But of course, it takes a little bit of learning to understand all the details and the specifics. But there are planetary periods and sub-periods which actually are at play. And so you'll notice these are milestones in people's lives when people divorce, or when careers change, or when you have a childbirth into the family, or someone passes away. Major milestones. And so when your life focus changes, I was interested in this. I used to have this hobby. I used to do this, and then all of a sudden, because this happened, now this is more important in my life. Well, you can find something in your life to point at and blame, or a person to blame for this or that happening. But the fact is, the planetary period changed, and you can actually know this ahead of time, and you can plan for it as best you can. That way, you can lessen the suffering, because we're all suffering to various degrees in different parts of our lives. But once you understand this information,
Guys, I actually have to jump. I
oh,
can't stay on, but one thing I'd love to hear, and this is the discussion that I wish I could stick around for, is it occurs to me that and I've talked to Stephen before, and I've also researched stuff like this, where we do pick the body, we pick the life that we're going to have before we get here, we pick the suffering, and we pick the challenges, and it's like, okay, so if we pick the suffering, if we pick the challenges, and then there's these secret yogas, and that we're not going to achieve success unless this, that, and the other. Like, there's so many mechanics that occur as behind the scenes. Then how does that get collapsed with ideas of evil? Because to me, if we tend to go down that philosophical path, that spiritual path, then ideas of selling our soul, ideas of evil, tend to fall away and dissolve, because the suffering, the opposition that we face is by choice. We chose it before we got here, so we have to overcome this. That's part of our journey of growth. It's not a evil experience. It's a growth possibility. It's just a really perhaps painful growth possibility. So I have to jump, but I wish I could hear that part of it. I'd love to hear how that kind of...
We can leave it right here and keep it for you for next week. How about
Cool.
that?
All right.
Okay, we continue next week. Okay, guys.
nice seeing you, Jeff. Thank you.
Comment for us and let me know, what do you think? Do you relate with what Jeff is saying, that now that you are walking the spiritual path, now that you have many tools, and you decide to use all of your tools, all of a sudden, instead of your outer world gets simpler, or becomes maybe not simpler, but becomes more the way you like it, or your ego likes it, all of a sudden it seems like there is a lot more chaos out there. Write a comment and let me know, what do you guys think? Have you experienced that? And by the way, if you want to see my guest, please join me on YouTube, Sudhi Burnett English, so you can see my guest. Dorsa, welcome. This is the first time Dorsa and Stephen, I put them in the same place next to each other. Stephen is a Vedic astrologist, beside everything else, economist, blah blah. And Dorsa, she's going to introduce herself. It's her first time joining me on YouTube. Dorsa, go ahead. Welcome, honey.
Hi, Sudhi June. Hi, everyone. Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me on your YouTube Live. I do intuitive tarot readings. It's been around 5 years that I'm practicing it. I know, comparing to you guys, 5 years is nothing, because you guys have been working on this your whole life. But yeah, I feel like after 5 years, I'm reaching a point that I feel like this is tarot is an instrumental tool in my coaching, and in the way I show up as a coach in the world. And I really take this tool seriously. And yeah, So I do tarot readings basically.
That is nice. By the way, guys, Dorsa is having a webinar. Did you start the webinar or is it upcoming? What's going on there?
Yes, I'm holding a workshop on July 6th is on how to use tarot for self-expansion and self-awareness. Because most of the people, when they think about tarot, especially our culture, they think about like fortune telling and using it as a tool to like predict the future. But tarot is not just used for that. You can use it as a tool to like go deeper with yourself and become conscious of your subconscious patterns and become more self-aware. And I want to teach that to people because I have I have found that power within tarot and I've been using it. So
That is wonderful. So anyway, guys, please follow Dorsa's Instagram and maybe you guys also want to join her upcoming webinar and see what's going on. Stephen, back to you guys. Stephen is also, how can I say, in the old age, for those of you guys who are around my age, you know that we didn't have the Google, but we had Yellow Pages. So Stephen is kind of like Yellow Page of before and the Google of today. Anything, any areas that you want to know about, Stephen has some knowledge about it. He has a vast knowledge of Ayurvedic. He knows very well about doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, all of that. Plus, Stephen, I might need to get some help from you because, as you know, I started my human design webinar. Some people, they don't know the time of their birth, and I said to them, I said, ask around from, some people, they lost their parents. And if you happen to be Iranian, this is very possible that when one child died, a year or two, the second child, they didn't bother to go and get a new birth certificate. I think, I'm actually not kidding. This happened to somebody that I was doing a session 2 years after the older sister dies. They use the same birth certificate, so she is now 2 years older from the time she was born. But anyhow, I told my the people who are in my webinar, I said I have a friend Stephen, and if you give him some events, like for instance, big events, when you moved from, for instance, Middle East to Europe or to Canada or big event, Stephen will be able to find out the time, because according to human design, the place and time of your birthday is very important. So would you be able to help us out in that area?
Yeah, of course. That's called chart rectification. Oftentimes people know approximately when they're born by asking their mother, father, who were there. But oftentimes this is it's very common, especially I know through Europe, from different relatives. Some countries simply don't record the birth time altogether, and so they may have a birth certificate with the date, and they don't have a time. And so if the family is not available or doesn't remember, then yeah, you have to work off of major events in the life. So relocations, childbirths, marriages, if losing a family member, something like this, some major event, or let's say you had a major accident, something like this. It shows up in the chart, and we can use things like this. The more you have, the better, because then we can take it from different directions and narrow it down. And then you can get I can't say we can go down to the minute, but we can narrow it down really close. And
Yes, because I told him, I said it was maybe like 15 years ago that I went to see an astrologist, and he did my astrology, and then he said, "Do you know what time you were born?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, you might want to meet Iris. She was a British lady, and she was a psychic." So I contacted her, and when I went to her, she started right away. We're talking about 15 years ago, when you used to have a tape recorder, and they would hand you out a cassette. And she said, the minute she started, she said, "Oh, there's this older lady here. She's wearing all in black, and she has a lot of flowers. And is that your mother?" And I said, "Yeah, my mother passed away like 20 years ago." And she said, and she gave me a lot of information. She said, "I'm a medium." And then she said to me, she said, "You were born between 3 to 4 p.m. In Iran." And then after she told me between 3 or 4, then I paid her $250. And then I called my sister. And I'm like, "Do you remember when I was born?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I came from a school. Mom already gave birth to you." So it was between 3 or 4, 3:30. See how accurate she got it. So that's why I know those who are psychic or great astrologists, especially like Stephen, Vedic astrologists, they can find that out, because I want to get out of it. Some of them, they asked me, "Can you do it?" I said yes, but that would be the last resort. Anyway, let's get back to our topic today. Have you sold your soul? Write a comment, guys. What indication should we look at to see if we have sold our souls? Dorsa, what do you think?
I feel like when people talk about like selling their souls, or like they hear this term selling their soul, that like they think about like Illuminati or like something very demonic, or like they make it seem worse than it actually is. But selling our soul could actually be just like subscribing to a certain programming and not questioning things in our life, because we are conditioned so much by society, by the government, by our parents' culture to be and show up in a certain way. And us not like losing touch with our authentic self and with our soul is in a way like not actually not making the efforts to connect with that authentic side of us is kind of selling our soul. So necessarily it doesn't need to be demonic when we talk about selling our soul. And it can start from questioning things. Sometimes, society condition us to not question anything and believe everything, because and believe science because it's stable. It's like facts. Like it's you can't question it. And because of like this like push to like believe everything that is like facts and like it's proven, we get conditioned to not question anything and not, be curious about anything. And I feel like that's the point where we lose our soul. That's the point where we sell our souls, because we're so afraid to question anything, and we're so afraid to be curious, make mistakes.
Mhm.
And yeah, and there are people who are stronger, and that's the point where the spiritual awakening starts, where they start questioning, and then they start to get a glimpse of what it is like to connect with that soul essence beyond all that fear and beyond all that conditioning and programming.
Very
So
nicely said, Dorsa. Absolutely. I mean, when the topic came to me and I just contemplating it, and I thought, what could that mean exactly? Is pretty much what you said, Dorsa, because I felt like, okay, there's a distinction between what part am I coming from. As you guys all know, I'm very much into dividing in third dimension. We divide it into two parts. The right side is ego, mind, and the left side is heart and soul. So I was thinking pretty much the same way. Like, I know when I come from my soul, or according to the topic, if I haven't sold out my soul, everything is just so um, pleasant. Is like there is no effort. Like everything that I touch, it's good. There is no judgment whether it's right or wrong or anything. I just a state of flow. I am totally surrendered to whatever is showing up at the moment. And when I'm doing something, it's just I'm just into a state of flow. So it's much easier and smoother. When I come to the part of the ego mind, it becomes very chaotic. I'm always behind. I'm overwhelmed. There are so many things that I have to do. And then the comparison comes in, the unworthiness shows up, not being enough, not loving. All of these things shows up when I come from the mind and ego. So basically, that was my understanding. I don't know. You guys write a comment and tell me what you think. What indicates that you have sold your soul? Coming back to you, Stephen. We only have a few minutes left. Sorry, guys, because I have another live coming up in Farsi pretty soon. So we just have to wrap up this live. If you guys really like the topics, we can continue next week. Stephen, back to you to wrap it up. What do you think, and what would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you for your explanation, Dorsa. Yeah, I think that as I mentioned earlier, we have I have 2 minutes left. Okay, so we've got our material consciousness. Yeah, when it comes to selling the soul, obviously, and from where you are near Hollywood, those of you that are familiar or live in Southern California know you may watch these videos of these, let's just say, music pop stars, for example, because they show it the most. And then they're wearing specific colors with specific geometric shapes on them, or they're actually doing music videos on top of a black and white checkered floor, things like this, where all these Masonic symbols are actually occurring. There is meaning behind all of this, and we don't have time to go into it today, but um, there are artists that are carrying these things out because they're instructed to do so. They're mesmerizing the public into actually becoming changing their consciousness into more material consciousness from spiritual consciousness. And of course, the desire to want fame and want beauty and wealth and power, all these things. And of course, Hollywood has been the source, an excellent source of all this. So we're actually fighting against this, because this is trying to keep us here. We want these things to reduce our suffering, and enjoy life. So I don't want to go over my time, but we can pick this up at another time. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Stephen. Dorsa, to wrap it up, would you like to add something?
You guys all said it well. Just if you don't want to sell your soul, just keep questioning everything and keep leaning into love instead of fear. Because the moment you choose fear, you lose your soul, basically. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Nice. Okay, guys, please, if you haven't subscribed on my YouTube channel, please do so, Sudi Burnett English, so you can see my guests, and also write a lot of comments. Let us know what is the topic that you are more interested to know about. What are your questions, and what would you like us to talk about more? Where do you need help? Which areas in your life do you feel blocked and you need more help? So we're going to close this live. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for always following me. Love you all, and we'll see you next week. And before I wrap it up, once again, don't forget, Dorsa has an online course is coming up. Dorsa, do you want to say it? Because I keep seeing people are joining on YouTube. So go ahead one more
Sure.
time. Tell us about your
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Sudiju. I'm holding a workshop on tarot and self-expansion, how to use tarot to go deeper with ourselves, and also do reading for ourselves to strengthen our intuition, and again, use it to witness our subconscious patterns. So if you want to know more about the workshop, you can follow me on Instagram. I can write my account in the comments. It's Dordori. You can learn all about it on my account. Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you.
Okay, very nice. Thank you so much, Stephen and Dorsa, joining me. Remember, guys, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Los Angeles time, I'm having an English live on YouTube. You can join me as a guest, or if you want, if you have a topics that you like to talk about, you can join me on YouTube. And at 10 a.m. Los Angeles time, I'm doing a join YouTube live again in Farsi. See you all next week. Thank you so much for being here. Much love. Take care. Bye bye,
Namaste.
everybody. Bye bye.